Hey, everybody. This is Jack from the Soul Patch Podcast. I have a quick message for you before we start the show. If you're living and working in South Korea, or you just have a Korea related experience that you would like to share, please come on the show and be our guest. We'd love to have you. You can contact us at podcast@thesoulpatch.com. That's podcast@thesoulpatch.com. Send us an email. We'll have you on the show. It'll be a blast. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Soul Patch Podcast.
My tainted perception distorts, my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the
Welcome to the Patch, everybody. We're here with a special guest, Doug. Doug, welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to meet you, Jack. Nice to meet you.
And Doug, you reached out to me and you had a really interesting story that you wanted to share. And I think this will fit nicely into part of our series, which we call the Hagwon Chronicles.
Right.
And they're just kind of like different Hagwon stories that have occurred in people's experiences, some negative, some positive. We're even going to talk to a Hagwon owner at some point here in the near future and kind of get that perspective. But Doug, you reached out to me because you had, I guess, for lack of a better word, a kind of a negative experience at just one Hagwon at a specific time during your tenure here in Korea. So maybe I'll let you just kind of start at the beginning. Like, how did you get this job? Was this through a recruiter? Was this something that you found on one of the websites? I'm just curious.
Right. Well, how it actually started was how I actually got this job was actually during the year when the pandemic started. After I have left my public school teaching position. After I have left my public school teaching position, I thought I would want to try my luck in another country teaching, in which I thought I would want to try teaching in Spain. But when the pandemic hit, that just basically eliminated or really reduced the opportunity that I would have. So then instead, the next place I went to while I was trying to figure stuff out was Thailand. I then went to Thailand next, hoping I could figure what my next move was, and then afterwards, as the pandemic was really raging on, I'm sure you understand during this time that during the pandemic, it was definitely an uncertain time. We definitely could not have predicted what the market was like. And I can remember during that time in which, even the ESL market in Korea, from what I assessed, was really not getting better. In fact, it was actually worsening as well. But anyway, long story short, how I have gotten this Hagwon position was basically through a recruiter after I have spent, countless hours going from recruiter to recruiter, hoping that they could at least help me get a teaching position in Korea, because at that time, I wanted to go back to Korea, at least just so I would be able to stabilize myself financially.
So you went to Thailand for how long were you in Thailand, if I can
Well,
ask?
I was there for about a few months.
Oh, okay. Because I taught in Thailand for 3 years. That was my first ESL job at a bilingual school.
Right.
But the problem is the pay is quite a bit lower than Korea, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. That's right. Well, I have considered teaching in Thailand before as well. I even once got an offer there from one of the recruiters, but then at the end, I just chose not to accept it for that reason.
yeah. What did you use a recruiting agency? Like, are you just going on like Dave's ESL Cafe or
Yeah,
Waygook.org?
I've
Yeah.
basically been searching that way, just like how any other typical ESL teacher would.
Okay. Okay. And so you kind of got lined up with a recruiter. They found you a position,
Yeah,
and
he
you were
did.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it did take him some searching to find me a teaching position that was willing to hire from abroad, because during that time, the pandemic, it even during that time, during the pandemic, it was even harder to find a Hagwon who would be willing to recruit from the outside. And I can definitely remember how I had to wait quite some time, if not what really felt like forever, for them to come up with a contract. I even
Mhm.
remember thinking during that time just how it felt like they were really dragging their feet with the Hagwon contract. But at that point, I was just
Mhm.
really desperate to really get a Hagwon contract. There's something, just really looking back that I should have just really held off on and just really have moved on with in hindsight.
Yeah, I actually have the flip experience. I started a recruiting agency with a friend of mine in Thailand. We had
Mm.
a Korean friend who owned a hagwon here in Korea, and we were trying to find teachers in Thailand because we thought, well, hey, that's like hand in glove, you know. There's a bunch of ESL teachers. They could go to Korea and make some more money. And we had the hardest time finding teachers that had actual bachelor's degrees. So
Right.
we'd have take these meetings and we're like, okay, so you have a bachelor's degree? And we're like, well, not really. I got a high school diploma. And we would just roll our eyes in defeat, you know, and it was, you know, it's really it's a little bit it's probably different now because this is like 15, 20 years ago.
Mm.
But
Right.
the standards in Thailand are probably much better now,
Right.
than they were. But I know that it's still like in Korea, they much prefer kind of probably hiring somebody that's right here already, right? Like they're
Well, I believe during the pandemic it has become more and more common. But now that we are seeing the pandemic situation become better with Korea that has been reopening more and more, I would expect, just as a side note, I would expect that more Hagwons, let alone schools, will be willing to hire from the outside. But yeah, I
Yeah,
have been
you're
noticed.
right. I don't know what I'm talking about because like most of the Hagwon teachers come straight from America, right? They graduate from college, they have their bachelor's degrees, and they
Right.
apply through their recruiting agencies or whatever, and they come over
Right.
here. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, during the pandemic, while I was in Thailand, I was really lucky to have found this one Hagwon position via a recruiting agency during that time. I mean, at that time, around that time, I was just really, desperate just to get back into Korea in order to create a more stable situation, at least starting with that Hagwon position. And
Mhm.
also at that point, while I was in Thailand, I was also hoping to get back into a public school teaching position as well. But
Right.
then unfortunately, it just really wasn't even easier at that point as well, because especially with public school teaching positions that are harder to come by than Hagwon positions, being outside of the country, I felt, counted against me during that time, especially in the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're right. You're right. And I would say the same dynamic is true at the university level as well, you know.
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
if you just like if you have two people for that are looking for that are going to fill one job, are you going to go with the person that you can meet in person, or are you going to go with the person that you talk to on the phone? I mean,
Right.
it's just kind of natural human instinct. It's like, well, you know, I know what this person looks like, I know their personality, there's no risk,
Mhm.
or at least there are fewer questions, you know. And so
And best
yeah.
of all, you also won't have to go through the visa process neither.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. And I can definitely remember during that time in Thailand, while waiting for that contract, I also had to wait quite some time to
Mhm.
really get my new visa number as well. The only part that I didn't have to do again because I was within the only part I didn't have to do again was having to get the background checks because I was, I think, within the time in
Is it
which
3 months or 6 months? I can't remember how
it's three
long.
months.
It's 3 months, right? Yeah.
It's basically 3 months in which if I have not left Korea for more than 3 months, then I wouldn't have to get the background check
Okay.
again. So I was lucky at that
Yeah.
part where I didn't have to go through that process again, especially in a foreign country to have
Oh
to
man.
you,
And then you have to get an apostille and all this
yeah, it would have
nonsense.
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and especially in Thailand during that time, I
Oh
don't think I
boy.
would have known where I could have, gone my fingerprint for the FBI background check, nor would I have even known whether or not they would be willing to do at that time.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, let's fast forward a little bit. So you found
Sure.
this Hagwon job. It looks good, right? On paper. You've got the
Well, yeah. Well, I just simply went along with it. I mean, I thought the contract was just, good enough for me. So then I decided just to sign it, without really too many questions about it.
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, so it was more like okay, this is the best I can find right now, and I'm kind of in a
Yeah.
pinch. So I'll take this for a
Right.
year and then, find something a little more suitable. But
Right. Yeah, I was in
yeah,
a. Yeah, you're definitely right. I was in a pinch during that time, and I was in a pinch during that time. And not only that, I remember thinking during that time about how I don't really think I'll be able to find another teaching position in Korea anytime soon. The longer I wait. Not to
yeah, sure.
mention during that
Right.
pandemic when it was really uncertain, I wasn't exactly sure how much better it's really going to be over the coming months. So I decided to just really accept the best I could really get at that present moment rather than if I have to wait and wait until things can get better. Because if I had to wait, because I felt if I had to wait longer and longer, then it would be like waiting forever. So that's
Yeah,
why I
yeah.
decided to go for that in a pinch.
Because you're either am I going to be stuck in Thailand or I'm going to be stuck in Korea? Well, I know Korea a little. I'm more familiar. It's a little more comfortable. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
Thailand is a great country. I love visiting there, but it is chaos in a bottle. You know what I mean? Like it can.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a lot
I
going
visit
on. Yeah.
I have visited Thailand a couple times before. I mean, not that I have ever worked in Thailand, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, just from the traffic to everything. But that's probably another podcast. We'll, we could do a Thailand
Sure.
podcast. Um, so you sign the documentations, you get the airline ticket, you fly over here. When because this story is I've already kind of given a spoiler that this was a less than desirable situation for you or an experience for you. What are some of the like red flags that pop up right away? Like what are you noticing? Like as you're like even on like the ride from the airport to the place where you're going to be teaching, are you starting to get the little kind of like hair standing up in the back of your neck, kind of like, oh, this is something's off here. Did you get any of those
Mm,
feelings?
right. Well, funny you actually asked me that because at the beginning, while I was on my way to airport and then flying on my way to Korea, I did not feel any red flags immediately. But what I will definitely say is this: I can definitely remember prior to coming back to Korea, I remember having this Skype video session with that director in which she basically mentioned something that was sort of at the last minute about this new quarantine rule that I would have to do coming into Korea. Well, I'm sorry, not
Mm,
quarantine rule. She actually mentioned, a new testing requirement specific to this province I would be teaching in that I was, initially surprised by. I remember, okay, I admit during that time I was really feeling stubborn to really understand, what she was really talking about because at the beginning, I was not even informed about how I would be required to take this PCR test
oh, okay. Yeah,
two
PCR
times
test.
because,
Yeah.
originally I thought I'd be doing one PCR test and then quarantine, and then afterwards I would be able to start. But it wasn't until I think maybe some weeks later or so that director, basically spilled out that bad news that, oh, okay, I actually will need to do the second PCR test. And afterwards, I remember thinking in my mind, like, wait, like, why are you just telling me this right now or something like that? So then I
Mhm.
also remember talking to this recruiter, asking him what's really going on there and something, as well as the potential implications about it. And then, he then basically told me about how he actually tried to get her to speak to me about it, but then unfortunately she just hasn't gone to it up until that point. So I guess this is probably the first red flag I had in which I think there was some communication issue there that was going on. And I think another thing that was probably a red flag at that point was also how they were really dragging their feet with giving me the contract. I thought they would give me the contract
Oh,
after they
okay.
liked my interview,
Hmm.
but after that interview, when they actually like and are willing to hire me, usually we would expect that they would give us the contract immediately, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember how I felt they were really dragging their feet for at least weeks about it, you know. And as they
Mhm.
were dragging on longer and longer, yeah, that just really made me realize in hindsight that, something just doesn't really seem to be right about it. But then
Were
I didn't really think
they,
too.
was it incompetence? Was it just bad bookkeeping, or was there a more nefarious purpose behind it? Like
To be
holding on
perfectly
to it.
honest with you, I'm not exactly sure.
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure, other than the fact that I thought it was just really strange that they would
Yeah.
really be dragging their feet by giving me the contract. But yeah, these were just some of the few red flags that happened. Even though, to be honest with you, since I was really in a pinch, I didn't really think too much.
Like in my mind, I'm thinking like it's possible that there at the time everything was really kind of like nobody knew what the protocols were, and so like throwing in an extra PCR test doesn't seem like totally out of line to me. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I know what you mean.
they're
Yeah, I
kind of
wanted to.
rolling with the government
Right.
or whatever the local government's
No,
requirements
no,
are. Yeah, yeah.
no. I mean, I didn't blame the director for that specifically. Not that I really blamed her for it, because obviously I
Mhm.
understand that was, beyond her control, in which we really had to roll with it. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, I know
but
what you
you had
mean.
to pay for that though, right? Like this is coming out of your pocket, the PCR test.
Fortunately, I did not have to pay even a single cent to it.
Oh, that's fantastic then. Okay, so it was just more of an annoyance, but it wasn't something
Right.
that cost you any money. Okay.
Yeah, it was just merely an annoyance for me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've got a couple of like red flags, although if we're going to be generous, we could say they're more like just a little bit bad at bookkeeping and just trying to stay abreast of like what the local ordinances are regarding
Yeah, we could
testing
say
and stuff
that.
like
I
that.
mean, I think
Okay.
that, yeah, I believe during that time they were not really. I think during that time they were really feeling uncertain what's really going on. And then later, although I'm kind of jumping ahead, I did later find out from one of the foreign teachers at the Hagwon that there were months in which they were not really teaching class. So I did suspect that they were taking time to contract because they weren't having me come in when there were no classes I had to
Mhm.
do.
Now, as far as like your pay, are you getting like a monthly salary then? It's just like you get 2.1 or 2, 2.4 or something like that per
I
month?
originally thought the salary was going to be 2.3, but I guess
Mhm.
this would be another red flag. The other red flag was that in reality, it actually was, in reality, it was actually about, or at least under 2.0 million per month or something like that. So
Mhm.
I started to somehow suspect that, I was being underpaid.
Now, did they say this is like internet, this is, these are your bills, or is it just like, oh, we decided we're not going to pay you 2.3, we're going to pay you less than what we promised? It's just kind of
Yeah,
a,
at that point, I didn't really quite question that. I mean, I thought that was just probably the way that they were really doing it. However, I was not really informed about why my pay was lower until I think basically on that last day or near the last day that I decided to quit that hog one.
mhm. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So you're pretty flexible then. You're being pretty gracious from my
Yeah,
perspective,
yeah,
because
I was.
if they mess
Yeah.
with my money, I'm gonna say something like right away,
Oh, of
like
course, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, at that point, like I have mentioned, I was really in a pinch and I was just really desperate to really stabilize my situation rather than just really be simply picky about it. And fortunately,
yeah.
I came in with a decent amount of savings as well, which also helped.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. And so you were just like, okay, I'm just doing this for a year. Let me not rock the boat. And so you come in, there's a couple of red flags, nothing super serious. Although I think the money thing is definitely one of those red flags that teachers should look out for.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What kind of teaching were you doing? Like what was your schedule like? Was it, you promised like 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and then they give you some split shift, 7 to
Right.
10?
Well, let me go ahead and tell you what it should have been like. in theory, at least
Hmm.
according to the contract. Yeah, but first, before I get to that, what I was teaching at was just basically at a kindergarten. I mean, it was actually a kindy slash elementary school in which I was teaching kindy in the morning and then some
Yep.
elementary school students in the afternoon.
Yep.
I will
Okay.
start off with that. And with that, in terms of what my schedule is like, in theory, it should have been a nice 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. schedule. But then here's the reality. And the reality of my schedule at that Hagwon was this. The reality was that even at 6 o'clock, our day was, just usually never done. Instead, usually at 6 o'clock, we would have these so-called meetings there, as well as
Okay.
any work that we really need to be done. And unfortunately, it was even specified in the contract where we even had to agree to do the extra work. We agreed to do the extra work even after our classes are done. So that's, I think, another red flag that I should have looked out for, that I think any teacher who goes for a hog wants to really look out for as well, which is to have read the contract even more closely to really make sure that this is something that they are willing to agree to. Something that I should have done, but instead I unfortunately didn't do.
Well, 9 to 6, that's a pretty long day. I mean, do you get like an hour break, hour lunch break in there? Is
Oh
there?
well, we do. Oh well, we do get an hour lunch break. That wasn't really the problem.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't really do the work in that hour break because you're actually eating lunch. So,
Right. And I
but
even
you're,
had
yeah.
and I
It's,
also
all right.
say that there was even some weeks in which I even had to help serve lunch to the kids as well, which even gave me even less time to get any work done.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah. Now, at my Hagwon, way back when, the Korean teachers had to do that. The foreign teachers were not asked to do that. However, fair or unfair, people think that is. But it's a real bummer to sit there and feed them, you know, like
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
because that's
Yeah,
not a break, that's work, as far as I'm
and I'll
concerned.
tell, yeah, and yeah, even so with that schedule I'm talking about in reality, it was always a guessing game as to when I'm actually going to get home after that already long day there. Because of these so-called daily meetings we have, it was just usually daily status updates about, what has happened, what really needs to be done there or something. And usually during these daily meetings, it was just really a guessing game as to, here's also another thing that I have started to notice after some time when things were starting to go downhill, at least with my Hogwarts experience, it's when I can remember that head teacher as well as that director at times would really, be criticizing me about something wrong, even something minor I have done wrong in which they really made a big deal about. And
Hmm.
yeah, as I have mentioned, even after 6 o'clock, it was always a guessing game as to what time we will even get to go home, let alone even what time I will really get to go home. And our director would even expect after 6 o'clock to really use that time to get any work done. And there was also another issue I was having with the schedule that really made me feel exhausted. Some days I would feel so exhausted that I would come home and I would be some days I was so exhausted after a really long day and after this criticism session that I would just really come home and simply feel angry and do nothing more other than just simply like, believe it or not, slam the bathroom door. No, really, I've
Yeah.
had some days where I come home and I just basically, was feeling super furious that I would just spend time slamming the bathroom door so loud. Like if my director was there, I would just simply slam it in her face and then she would have felt, my anger there. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just really
sure.
how I was really
Yeah.
feeling. I'm not sure if you
So,
ever felt like that before, where you were so angry coming home that you just really wanted to slam the door on someone.
I also lose the handle every so often for sure. Just to ask my wife about that. But I know what it's like to. I know what you're saying. You're so frustrated and you feel so helpless.
Exactly.
How long are these meetings? Like she's keeping you to 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Like how long are you staying there?
It really varies. Some days, if we were really lucky, we actually had a meeting as short as 15 minutes.
Okay.
It was even rare that we didn't have any meetings at all, but some days I was lucky if the meeting was 30 minutes. Otherwise, it would at least, an hour and a half before
Wow.
she would allow us to go home. And I remember there was just some days in which I thought we would have a meeting, only for us to really sit around, not really doing anything until she finally tells us, oh, we can really go home. So I would be thinking during my mind, like, okay, so it was just basically us sitting there for nothing. I mean, she could have just really let us go home, she
Mhm.
could have just really allowed us to really go home already, rather than just have us, especially me, sit around for quite a while, like an hour and a half. And I'll tell you, especially on a Friday, you definitely know what we would like to be doing on a Friday, right? Friday night comes, you know what we would much rather be doing on a Friday night, right?
You're like, I should be on my third beer right now. We're still, you know. Um,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
somehow, yeah. Even on a Friday night, I would still be sometimes stuck in this, long meeting, or let alone having to be stuck, having to do even more work that I have to catch up on that I wasn't really able to do during the work hours, which is also another red flag. My schedule was also another red flag in which in between classes I did not always have enough time between classes. At most during the day I would only have up to 2 hours, maybe like 3 hours of free time total per day, just to get work done during that
yeah,
time.
sure.
And even that was never enough time. And I also want to add another thing that was also another red flag as I have come along, was also my director and her friend being the head teacher, their perfectionism with how the books should be done. Which you can really see how that really makes it harder for me to, get the work done during these hours if she expects me to really be perfect with the type of work that I was doing, which I'll be happy to go into a bit more detail about it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to paint a picture here. So, how many other professors, or sorry, how many other co-teachers are there with you?
Well, I don't think well, at my Hagwon, I don't, at my Hagwon, we were basically teaching classes alone. But I will definitely say at my Hagwon, besides the director, we had, as I just described to you, this head teacher who happens to be that director's good friend of hers. And then
Hmm.
along with me, there was also this other Hagwon teacher from America, as well as also two part-time Filipino teachers.
Okay.
And then, obviously some other Korean teachers that would be teaching classes as well. But one thing we all have in common was we would be teaching these classes all by ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. But I was just kind of curious, like how many other foreign teachers there were. But it sounds like there were two then, or
Well, there were
one.
actually, well, there was one teaching full time like I was, and then
Yeah.
two Filipinos who were teaching part time.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. So four, but two of them are teaching part-time, one other full-time. How was your like the other the other full-time teacher, what was his or her attitude about the school? Were they content, or did they also find these meetings, really annoying?
Right. Well, with the other foreign teacher who I was somewhat more close to there, I think from what I can tell, he was more content than I was. I mean, although I imagine he probably wasn't a huge fan of it, I think he was more tolerant of it
Mhm.
compared to me, as well as also this other Filipino teacher who would teach part-time.
Yeah, I mean, like your situation, I mean, I definitely, so far it sounds annoying. It sounds like you work for a micromanager.
Exactly,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, definitely loves to kind of control everything and stuff.
Yep, you
But
got that right.
also, but at the same respect, in the same respect, it doesn't sound like she's a total tyrant. Was there do things just devolve and get worse here? Is there like what is the what really gave you like a bad taste in your mouth for this particular institute and her
Right.
managerial style, I guess.
Right. Well, you definitely mentioned one. Right. Well, what definitely gave me a bad taste is what you have just mentioned, which was that she was really a micromanager. And the
Mhm.
first sign of how I realized she was a micromanager was basically I can remember there's that one day I was trying to teach class, with my own way, like how I have done the public school before. I remember trying to teach my own way in which I did my own games, but it wasn't until just randomly by surprise she appeared to one of my classes to see what was happening. And afterwards, she
Mhm.
then, told me directly about how this is not the way to really do things and stuff like that. And that that's when I realized that first red flag, regarding her, in which that really gave me that taste of how much of a micromanager that was. And although anyone would have thought that this would have been an isolated incident, well, unfortunately, this did not turn out to be an isolated incident. This one was
Mm.
not really an isolated incident at all.
She wanted to. We had another guest a couple of weeks ago. His name we Frank, I believe,
Right.
um, who he would get criticized because he wasn't teaching the same way as the director. And the director, he said, like, he admitted, Frank was honest and said the director was a good teacher, but teaching is such a kind of idiosyncratic practice, and at least in my mind, where I might have a style, and but I can't exactly copy and paste that onto somebody else. You know what I mean? You have
Yeah,
to
I know what you mean.
you've got your strengths. We've all got our strengths and our weaknesses. We've all got our own unique personalities, and I think those attributes inform the way that we teach. And to say that, oh, I've had success doing it my way, so why don't
Mm,
you just copy what I do? Yeah, but you're not me and I'm not you. And
I agree
so
with
you've got
that.
to find your own path. And I think sometimes um, people who don't have an educational background, they might have a business background. So they're business owners, they own a Hagwon, think that education is just like, well, that guy's a good teacher, so why don't I just have all my new teachers copy exactly what he's doing? And it's like, that's a fool's errand, you know. um I don't know if you felt like that, if that's what they were
Yeah,
kind of
I
pushing you a little
sort of
bit.
felt like that. I sort of felt like that, except for the fact that she was never really clear about how I should really be teaching students. I mean,
Okay.
oftentimes it was just really, I mean, oftentimes, it was really a guessing game as to how she actually would expect me to teach the class. And I think even when I have tried to ask her how to teach a class, she would then, I think, in some way direct me to some of these teachers guide there and stuff like that.
Right,
And
yeah. The
right,
good
but
old teacher's
otherwise,
guide, yeah.
unlike that person you have to describe, unlike that person, Frank, you have to describe with that director where that director wanted him to try to copy his style there or something. Yeah, I would say that director was more of the opposite, where she was never really clear about how I ought to be
Okay.
teaching at all. And it doesn't just, and it's not just about teaching where she was never clear about. Another thing I also had to do at that Hog one was also create worksheets. And that, when it came to creating worksheets, was always a guessing game. It was almost always a guessing game in terms of how she wanted the worksheets to really look like. But she expected me, as well as this other foreign teacher, to create worksheets with the student books for them to do. And basically, if that job was easy, then I would have been willing to create. Then I would have wanted to create the worksheet my way and not have to get approval for it. But unfortunately, since I was working under her, she expected us to run the worksheets by her for approval before we
Yeah.
have a copy and assigned by the students. And whenever I did the worksheets, it was always a guessing game on everything regarding the worksheets, from the font to the size to even the pictures there or something. It was always back and forth approval. And I can remember there were some days when she would go over the worksheets that I've been working on, and she would be really nitpicky about every single detail on that worksheet, from the font to the picture to everything. Sometimes I felt like she was
The
taking.
font to the picture. She sounds like just it just seems like this woman's really is kind of a I don't know what the
Nitpicky,
word
that
is.
is basically, well, nitpicky is
Yeah.
perhaps the best word to
Well,
describe it.
it's almost like a lack of maturity as a business owner. It's like if you're afraid to delegate anything to your workers, then that's on you. You need to hire people that you trust that you can delegate to and not try to oversee every single tiny little aspect of it. First, it's going to drive your employees crazy. And then
Absolutely.
it's just giving you mountains of work that is totally unnecessary.
Yeah, and let me
It's
tell
very
you,
strange. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. I could not agree with you any further. And let me tell you, I even talked about it before in one of my cacao groups related to teachers who teach in a Hagwon. I remember describing that, and one person even made the point about how, while she is definitely open to constructive criticism, if she really wants something that specific, then she should do it herself. So I remember agreeing
Sure.
to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would remember thinking to my mind exactly the same thing that if she really wanted something specific with that worksheet, she should do it herself because otherwise, you're right. It really sounded like she didn't really have enough trust in me, creating that worksheet. It's just what you have mentioned about delegation. It sounded like she did have a delegation issue there. And yeah, I can remember there were moments of frustration. Really, I remember having moments of frustration, having to go back and forth with that worksheet until she's finally satisfied with it.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
don't remember, yeah, I mean, it would feel like I have to run it by her. I don't know how many times, maybe 5 times, maybe 10 times, or something like that. And even if the font is off, let's say even if that font was off, or even the spacing is off there, she's still not happy with it. Even if the
Yeah.
content is good, she was quite a perfectionist um, about the spacing and everything on how
Well,
it really looks.
I don't think she doesn't understand that every time you do this to your employee, you're taking a bite out of the morale. You know what I mean?
And
And yeah,
she was also taking a bite out of my time as well, while at the same time
sure. Yeah.
she also at the same time, understandably, just like every other Hogwarts director, she had deadlines on when the book had to be completed as well. But then what she didn't realize, I remember during that time, was how every time she expects me to do that on top of meeting her deadline, it's actually, how should I say this, it's actually counterintuitive there. You want perfectionism, but then at the same time, you also want completion by the deadline. In which one of the things I've learned about perfectionism is this: contrary to contrary to what we think, perfectionism actually creates more work, and to the point where you're just not really going to get work done the more you try to be perfect, right?
Oh yeah, sure, sure. So all right, so you've kind of set the stage. I've got like a pretty I think essentially what you're kind of struggling with is a I don't want to call her a tyrant because I don't think it doesn't seem like it's malevolence from coming from her, but it just seems like kind of poor management where she's a micromanager. She's a
Absolutely.
kind of helicopter boss, kind of just and she wants to get her fingerprints on everything. And it's like afraid to delegate, afraid to surrender any sort of responsibility or power to anybody else, which at the end of the day means she's spread so thin that it's probably causing other problems that are much worse than the wrong font on your worksheet.
And
um
it wasn't just, and let me also add that it was not just limited to worksheets. I mean, the worksheet was one thing, but not only was she really being nitpicky about the worksheet, rather another thing she was really nitpicky about was also how when I had to take pictures of students, doing the so-called activities that are in the book, like, demonstrating some action, like for example, oh, I don't know, it can be something like an action word, like um let's see, walking or something like that. I can't remember the details, but it was something like walking to them, blowing or something like that. She was also really particular about how these individual student um, pictures should also look as well. I thought
yeah.
as though she really wanted me to be like a photographer
Right
at that same time.
now she's not happy with the mise en scène in the the composition of the of the photographs.
And let me also add with the student books as well that even when we have these students do these student workbooks, right? I mean, in the Hogwarts how we have students do these student workbooks, right?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, she as well as the head teacher. You also have to understand. Besides that director that was involved, there was also that head teacher who was also second in command that would also oversee things as well, just to really help your listeners understand is so yeah, also with the workbooks, she also expected perfectionism over the workbooks as well, such as how whenever there was like some scribble or some messy handwriting, she would then expect me to have these students write and rewrite again until finally the handwriting was it looks really neat to their so-called standards.
You know
Any
what? I think
scribble,
you just worked for a boss that had OCD.
I thought so.
I think
And to
that's the
even
problem.
And the worst thing was how she would blame, a lot of the worst thing was how, from what I can tell, she did not really seem to really take any responsibility for her own, weakness there, her perfectionism as well as her
Sure,
nitpickiness
because she
and
doesn't see it as
OCD.
a liability. She sees it as a virtue or strength.
Yeah, she just seems to,
Yeah.
yeah, she just seems to, yeah, I thought she just seems to push that problem onto me to really take care of it. Like I can
Yeah.
solve all the problem in the world. I thought she sounded like I could solve all the problems in the world in which I can't do, in which you understand.
She's like, I built this Hagwon with my own hands. The building, no, I know the type of person I can. You've given me a kind of, uh,
It's
again,
actually funny.
she's not a bad person. It's just that this is a very, um, incompatible kind of management style, or what if it is OCD or it is perfectionism.
I
It,
thought it was an
yeah.
incompatible management style that didn't really seem to respect who I am as a person, where she
Oh,
didn't really
sure.
seem to
Yeah.
give me much room to be laissez-faire with my lessons. Now, about that hog one though, here's actually the funny thing. The funny thing was that she's actually not the owner, rather the hog one was actually owned, I believe, by her parents, but by her parents. However, as far as
Mm,
her parents being the owners goes, they were not usually too involved with the day-to-day operation. Rather, I think the
sure.
most they had to do with the hog one was to simply take care of the bills as well as some of the paperwork. That's the most that they would be doing. But otherwise, when it came to
Yeah.
day-to-day operation, yeah, day-to-day operation, that's where the director was responsible for.
Yeah, yeah, maybe she's just young, just she's figuring it out, and she thought, I got to come in hot, I got to come in strong. And maybe, she learned her lesson. Now tell
Well,
me,
go
when
ahead.
did things get to a boiling point, like where you're just like, I can't do this anymore? Like,
Um,
did you end up running? Did you end up walking out? Or what was you
well,
how'd you get out of this
right.
job? Yeah.
Well, ultimately, I will go ahead and I can go ahead and talk later about how I have decided to quit this hog one and what happened during the last day in which what I'll definitely say was that one thing for sure is that I did not last in this hog one for even a year at all. In fact, I was only at that hog one for 6 months for
Mm,
starters. But anyway, when it came to the boiling point, my boiling point to her that I actually had, that really made me lose respect for her from then on was basically it started that one night and even the next day. This is what happened. There was that one night when I got back home after a long day at that hog one as usual, and as I was just trying to enjoy my night, at home, I remember she sent me a message on Skype asking me to come to the hog one early tomorrow because I made mistakes with the student book, such as how I mixed up the student pictures there, stuff like that.
mm, mm.
And then, I then basically told her in hopefully a polite way by saying to her about how, okay, I'll come in, but hopefully it's not going to take too long. And then afterwards, she then got instantly offended by saying something like, teacher, don't talk to me like that. And then
Mm.
afterwards, I then apologized as though I even pretended I know what's really happening. I just apologized, even though I
Mm.
only pretend to really be sorry for it. But in reality,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm just talking to a director who is obviously above the hierarchies, right? So we kind of want
Yeah.
to at least pretend we gave them respect. So I then apologized and told her, okay, I'll come in tomorrow. And then so then the next day came. Next day came, and to jump right into it, that's when it actually got a bit worse starting from there, in which she was really in a hurry and in a pinch to really send these books home to these students there. But then before that were to happen, she expected me to solve the problems with some of these student pictures being mixed up in the
Mm.
student books there. And I remember as I was furiously trying to correct it there or something. She was at the same time really getting so heated, so heated because she was under a lot of stress. Like she really wanted to get the book sent home there, and right as I was right, and I can remember how it was a bit chaotic that morning, in which she basically blamed me for the problems with the mix-up with that book. Now, let me go
Mhm.
ahead and say this. I admit that I did make some mistakes. Actually, I would say a number of mistakes with the student books because I had the wrong student picture with the wrong students there. But another thing to keep into perspective was that I was also teaching, many students, like up to 100 students, in which if you can understand this, it's really hard to really remember all the students' name all at once, especially if we're teaching like up to 100 students
Yeah.
total there. So naturally, it did happen in which I didn't exactly know which student was which there or something like that, even though that's what the director really expected there. But anyway, going back to the point, yeah, I can remember how she was really furious, if not furious to the point where when I was trying to talk to her, she cut me off and basically told me two words that I can still remember to this day, which was this: shut up.
Oh, okay. So she crossed the line there, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she basically crossed the line, and that's when I remember. That's when I began to really lose respect for her
Yeah.
so-called lack of professionalism with dealing with the problem. When I believe she's the one, when I believe her perfectionism is really the problem, rather than me making these stupid, silly, perhaps insignificant mistakes.
Sure, sure. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, man. She's a tough one to kind of understand. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why. I understand why they want them to be right, but usually those kinds of issues are handled by in a Hagwon, there's an assistant that's kind of working with the professors to make sure that the parents are receiving, the right picture with the right it usually isn't just delegated onto the teacher who's already teaching a bunch of classes. So I don't know. It seems
Interesting.
it's a little it seems like you guys were a little bit overwhelmed. Like you just there were
We
just like
were.
too many
I
duties
Oh
on.
yes, I was
Yeah.
overwhelmed almost every day,
Hmm.
Almost every day I was really overwhelmed, working at that school with not so much free time there. And even that free time I have was even that free time I had to really try to get work done with the worksheets as well as the book and even any planning done there. Sometimes it was really being compromised whenever the director or the head teacher wanted me to help out with other things here and there. Like I can remember there's some other days in which I had to help out with some other things. I really took more time away from my already limited free time that I already had. So yeah, that really made me feel even more overwhelmed. Sometimes I would feel so overwhelmed to the point that, that just so I can really try to just so I can really try to get some relief, I would at
Yeah,
least try
yeah,
to go to
yeah.
like a quieter spot. And then I can remember there are some times in which I would just simply be gossiping behind my Facebook messengers, just really gossip behind my
Well,
Facebook messenger to my friend or even to my
yeah.
cacao, about this director. I'll tell you.
It sounds
Oh,
like things just got toxic, It's just
oh yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I can remember there's that one friend who I think almost I don't know how often anymore I was talking to him about it, but I think every other day after I got off work, I remember just really sending, my friend a message about some problems I had. It's like it felt like almost every single day there was always something small that I had to complain about my director to some of my friends about it.
Sure, sure. So yeah, I mean, it really everything you paint here just seems to point towards like a micromanager, maybe as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience managing people, who thinks projecting strength means, kind of nitpicking and criticizing and like you said, micromanaging. But yeah, so that seems like when she finally lost her temper and told you to shut up, and in your mind I can see you kind of switched off. You're like, all right, I'm done with you. you know um
Yeah,
what
actually, it was actually at that point where I have really determined that I will do anything to really get out of that hogwan and
yeah,
then move on to something better, like a public school position there. And
yeah,
I'll tell you this. I'll also tell you that at the beginning of my contract, I remember trying the first time asking her if she could at least let me out of the contract early there because I was really feeling too overwhelmed and too stressed out. I first tried that, with her, and then at first it just didn't really seem to succeed with her. I mean, that
Mm.
first time being early in the contract, she didn't really seem receptive to that idea early on. But it wasn't until here's when I actually got my lucky break in which she actually was nice enough to at least open the door for me to quit the Hagwon job with a letter of release that I was lucky to have
Oh, she gave you
done.
the letter of recommendation. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you,
Letter
did
of
they did
release.
they pay did they cover your pension? Were they honest at least in that way? Like
At least they were pretty honest with covering my pension as well as health insurance. That
oh,
itself I had
that's
no
yeah.
issue with.
So she doesn't, I've heard some stories of some pretty unsympathetic characters in our podcast that we, as we talk about directors. I don't think she's necessarily a bad person. It
No,
just
I don't
sounds
think
like
so.
it just sounds like she sounds like an inexperienced manager to me. I don't know how old she was or how young she was. You don't need to say.
Well, she's
Um,
in her 40s actually. 40s.
yeah, and maybe this is something that she's, but again, I don't know how long she's been running a Hagwon, but and sometimes people don't learn either. You know what I mean? Like they just keep doing the
Yeah,
same thing, and you get
right.
turnover, and it's like because they're unwilling to change, and so because they think that they're right or whatever. But I mean, she doesn't strike me as like a bad person. It's just that
No,
it's just unfortunate that she had to be such a micromanager that it's kind of pushing alienating, ostracizing her own employees and undermining you and not making you feel less competent than you actually are, because it's like oh, you're doing this wrong. It's the criticism. There's a lot of stick, but there's no carrot. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, at least to me, she was like that. Now, to the other foreign teachers, she wasn't really that harsh. So rather, I believe the only person she was harsh to, unfortunately, was to me.
Can we just jump to kind of your exit from the Hagwon? Is that
Sure.
okay? All right, thanks so
Yeah,
much.
okay.
Okay.
Sure, sure. Okay, so my exit with the hog one, as I have mentioned, was when I got a lucky break, in which there's that one day when the director told me, oh, well, I was talking to this other foreign teacher, I was talking to this other foreign teacher about, what you want to do after the contract and stuff like that. And I remember it was that one day when I was overhearing that, but then I figured it was just really a private conversation. At that point, I thought
Mhm.
it was just a private conversation that I thought had nothing to do with me. So I didn't think much about it. But it wasn't until I think later that day, that's when I caught the lucky break in which she then asked me, whether or not I would be happy or okay to continue until my contract is finished, or if, instead I'm willing to leave, in the next couple of months, after 3 months, because around that point, at around that point, I was already 3 months into that contract when she had asked me about it. And then that point, when she actually asked me about it, I actually saw that as an opportunity for me to negotiate. So then I basically stated pretty clearly to her after a couple of times that, I actually want to leave this Hagwon, in exchange that you give me the letter of release as well as the so-called letter of recommendation. So then,
Oh
long story
wow.
short, she
Okay.
actually agreed to it, but
Yeah.
obviously she did not give that to me immediately.
Mhm.
At that point, though, I was actually hoping she would let me out early, but unfortunately, since it was the pandemic and she wouldn't have an easy time finding a teacher, she agreed to let me out later around the 6 month or halfway through the contract.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's even, I mean, she's way more reasonable than a lot of the directors that we've heard about. So you got the letter of recommendation and you got the letter of release. You got it
Well, at the
eventually.
end, I did. At the end, I did. Although I have to
Yeah.
admit, it was a struggle for me to get it because she did agree to it, but then she definitely wasn't willing to give it to me right away, like immediately within that day there.
Yeah, she dragged her feet a little bit, but
Until the
ultimately you
very
got
last.
it. And
Ultimately, I got it
yeah.
on the very last day, which, funny enough, it was on a Saturday.
Right. And so were you able to parlay that into a better job in a public school at some point?
Yep, I definitely was able to parlay that into a better job, into a public school after
Fantastic.
some time. And
Yeah.
fortunately, yeah, unfortunately, long story short, getting this public school job actually happened relatively quickly, and it even happened by luck that I didn't really expect at all. So I was really lucky
Yeah.
that even happened.
A lot of jobs like that, just I'm telling you, apply for everything. If there's one rule I've learned, is you never know what's going to happen. Somebody leaves the last minute, you're right there in line, and you know what I mean. Like it's just you never know when serendipity is going to strike as far as jobs go. So don't be negative. Just apply for everything, because you just never know. You never know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember prior to quitting this Hagwon job, I was applying for every possible position I was able to find and create that would hopefully get better. I mean, I remember in between my contract before quitting, I remember doing just about everything, just about anything I can do to at least hopefully get another position. And while I was hoping for a public school job, at the same time, I also lower my expectation as well because I realized getting a public school position back then wasn't really going to be easy. So I really had to adjust my expectation in order to at least get somewhere rather than be dead set, which is also another thing to mention as well, which is this. Like you said, I agree that we should apply to everything. And because of that, we also really need to be realistic about what we are able to get rather
Sure.
than just to be dead set on one type of job. Like, for example, what would be really unrealistic is to really hope to get a university position after quitting this Hagwon job when, as we understand about university positions, that is not going to be easy to come by. So we kind of have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, temper your expectations, but you never know what, might just fall in your lap.
Exactly.
Timing is everything. Um, Doug, thank you so much for taking time this evening to talk to me. I know it was such short notice.
I
Um,
understand.
we I have to give a shout out to FeedSpot, because they put us up on their list of 25 best podcasts about South Korea, and
Hmm.
I think we're number 7. We need our audience here to help us get up to number 2 or number 3. But you could find us at our website, thesoulpatch.com. That's thesoulpatch.com. It's a one-stop shop where you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on Stitcher. You could listen to the podcast. You can stream it right from our website. If you have a little extra coin in your pocket, you can smash that Patreon button and buy us a cup of coffee. You can go to our YouTube channel, the Soul Patch Podcast YouTube channel, and you can listen to the podcast there. And if you have it in your heart to give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts, that will really, really help us out. And with that, I'm going to say thank you one more time, Doug. I really appreciate the talk. And we'll say goodbye to our listeners. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, all right, sounds good. Well,
All right.
thank you very much, Jack. I hope you have a great evening then. Thank you.
You too. All right. Take care, Doug. Have a great one. Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Knocking gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby.
Let the bass go.
Call me an eater. Call me a dominant. Long face.